When dealing with choking patients for infants, children, and adults, the difference with a child versus an adult, not much is different. The smaller the child is, if they are standing up, you want to get as low as possible to get down to their level. Another difference with a child versus an adult patient, we're not hitting as hard right away. However, if after the third and fourth back blow, I do not get the result that I want, then yes, I'm going to be hitting harder than I'm comfortable with. Of choking protocols, where it becomes a real difference is when we're dealing with infant patients. By definition, 0 to 1 years old. Patient's parent gives the baby to me and he or she says, help, 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 my baby's choking. They've already done two things. They've given me confirmation that the infant is choking, and they've also given me confirmation that they do want the help. They've already done the check. I might as well get them to make the call for check, call, and I'll provide the care. Now, if it's in a situation where there's more than 3 of us, then I don't get the parent to call 911, but rather get one of your colleagues to call 911. The moment the infant gets transferred to you, help, my baby's choking, okay, you call 911, let them know what we have and where we are. Now we can proceed to help this patient. So the parent has done the check, get someone to make the call, and you can provide the care for check, call, care. First thing that we want to make sure when dealing with infant choking, partial airway obstruction versus complete airway obstruction, not much is different from adult children and infants. If it's a partial airway obstruction, you do not want to intervene physically. You want to allow the opportunity for an infant, child, or adults, the opportunity for them to save themselves. Why we do not want to intervene with partial airway obstruction, whether they're infants, children, or adults, is partial airway obstruction is very uncomfortable to the patient. However, they are still getting some form of airway exchange. You want to allow the opportunity for them to get that air out because you do not want to be the reason to start the back blows or J thrust, and you've turned a partial airway obstruction, a bad situation, into a complete airway obstruction, a much worse situation. The biggest difference with an infant versus children or adults are that I can manipulate their body. Keeping in mind, if they are choking standing up, gravity is working against me. If their head is lower than their body, gravity working with me. This is not how we're holding an infant, but just to show you in relation to their head, you want gravity in your side. If the patient's parents has given the infant to me, I have someone call 911, have the infant sit on the crook of my elbow or on my bicep facing away from me. I now grab the infant's cheekbones. I say cheekbones, not their mandible and not their neck like this, because if and when I do need to perform my back blows, it's important that I secure their cheeks throughout their entire body, so that way their body works in conjunction with one another versus opposite of one another. So what I'm gonna show is what not to do. You'll notice what's happening with the infant when I do my back blows is their back of their head is being hit like this. So we're causing more potential damage to the back of their neck. However, if we hold them properly, we're not the mandible, because that's another hinge to what we want to control, but rather their cheekbones. We have their cheekbones here. My elbow is connected to my inner thigh. My forearm is attached onto my leg, right, like so. If you are comfortable with it, have their head in between your legs, so that way their head is much lower to their body in comparison, which means gravity is working that much more in my favor. Just to having the infant in between here is, if I have to hit, I do have to use a little bit more of upper body strength, so that way I don't take that full swing. The advantage of having my forearm rest on my thigh is that if and when I do have to hit, I do not have to rely on my upper body strength because my leg is already supporting the infant's weight. Partial airway obstruction, which means they're crying, coughing, wheezing, all of the above, then we do not want to hit, but rather we just have them facing the floor, head lower than their body, just like so. This will help facilitate get the food out of their throat just in case it's about to come out. This is all we're going to do until it becomes a complete airway obstruction. Would need to resist the temptation of hitting if there's some form of airway exchange. This is all we're gonna do until it's either A, food comes out, that's great, or it now becomes a complete airway obstruction, which means I can no longer hear any more airway exchange in the form of crying, coughing, and or wheezing. Once it becomes a complete airway obstruction, now I would still like to hit in between the shoulder blades. Left shoulder, right shoulder, meet right in the middle with the heel of my hand. Head lower than the body with the heel of my hand. In between the shoulder blades, we would like to perform 5 back blows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After the 5th back blow, I'm the back of their head with my free hand. I squeeze their spine with my right forearm, my free forearm. I'm on one side of my hip. The patient is facing the floor. I then go on the other side of my hip. The patient is now facing the sky. Legs ideally on either side, head lower than the body. Head lower than the body, and remember when I said if I was able to locate the nipples, I was able